Hi everyone, my name is Cormaine, and today I'm going to try and answer a question I commonly get in my stream, which is when you should choose to channel Soothing Mist. So to start channeling Soothing Mist, it costs you 1 second. This is not the same thing as a GCD. The channel for Soothing Mist to start is always 1 second no matter what your haste is. Right now, a GCD for me is 1.3 seconds. Once you're inside Soothing Mist, the time to cast Enveloping Mist or Vivify also costs 1 GCD. So to hard cast Vivify right now, it is also 1.3 seconds. So if you are instant casting Vivify inside of Soothing Mist, it actually doesn't save you any time on the Vivify cast itself. It just adds the extra healing of Soothing Mist ticking while you're doing the Vivify. For Enveloping Mist, the cast time is 1.7 seconds. So if you choose to cast it inside of Soothing Mist, you're basically saving about 0.4 seconds on the cast, and of course getting the extra healing from Soothing Mist. So to look at whether choosing to spend the 1 second to put Soothing Mist on the target before the Vivify goes off, we kind of have to know how much healing the target needs to know if that extra second put in is worth it. And to do that, we're going to kind of look at some numbers and try and compare. So if we're looking at just Soothing Mist, just one tick of Soothing Mist, the healing comes out to about an average of 17,044. This does include the chance for it to proc the Mastery. It has a 1 in 8 chance of proc Mastery healing. And if we look over here at this column, this is healing per second spent casting. I don't want you to get this mixed up with healing per second you're gaining. This is healing per second that you spend casting this spell. So basically it's looking at the efficiency of your cast time and the healing that you get out of that. So for 1 tick of Soothing Mist, that's 17,044. If we look at Vivify, I mentioned earlier my cast time is 1.3 seconds. The healing is around 45,000. So the amount of healing we get for the seconds that we spent casting, which is 1.3, is 35,000. About. Now if we look at just choosing to channel 1 Soothing Mist into a Vivify, you get about 2 ticks of Soothing Mist when you do that. The time to cast is 2.3 seconds, the healing is close to 80,000, and the efficiency of it is about 34,620. So as you can see, the difference in efficiency here is not that high. Choosing to just hard cast Vivify is a little bit more efficient than choosing to Soothing Mist before the Vivify. But the big difference here is knowing the difference in the actual healing it's going to provide. So this is about 25,000, and we're going to see these kind of small differences as we keep going down the chart. So next we're going to look at choosing to hardcast 2 Vivifies. So this is about 0.3 seconds longer than choosing to Soothing Mist into Vivify, and then out of that you get about 12,000 more healing, it looks like. So you do 91,000 healing on average for that, and so the healing per second spent casting here, or the efficiency, is about 35,000. So it's about the same as the previous two. Again, there's not a big difference. Next, we're going to look at a setup that does give a big difference, which is when you choose a Soothing Mist before you do 2 Vivifies. So the cast time on this is 3.6 seconds, so it's a whole second longer than doing 2 Vivifies. And the healing you get from it is about 50,000 more, so 142,000. And the efficiency is much higher than the previous ones, which is 39,500. It's about 4,500 higher than just choosing to do 2 Vivifies. Next, we're going to look at if you choose to do 3 Vivifies. This is about 0.3 seconds longer than the Soothing Mist into 2 Vivifies, and it's less healing, so it's about the same efficiency as all the other options up here. Next, we're going to look at some of the combinations that involve Enveloping Mist. So to hardcast 1 Enveloping Mist is about 1.7 seconds, about 140,000 healing, and the efficiency is about 80,000. If you choose a Soothing Mist into an Enveloping, the difference is only about 0.5 seconds. And the healing is a little bit more. This does include the fact that the second Soothing Mist does benefit from the healing bonus from Enveloping Mist, but the efficiency is a little bit less than if you chose to just hard cast the Enveloping Mist. And this is mostly just because Soothing Mist is just so much smaller than looking at Enveloping Mist, which is like, you know, a hot that lasts a long time and does a lot of healing. So if you do Enveloping Mist into Vivify, the time to cast that is about 3 seconds. The healing is about 240,000, and the efficiency is pretty close to just hard casting the Enveloping Mist. And if you choose the Soothing Mist into Enveloping and Vivify, the time to cast is about 3.6 seconds, healing about 300,000, and this has the 5,000 higher efficiency than the others because you get the extra bonus on the Vivify, of course, after you do the Enveloping. So I think looking at these 4, the difference is less important because most of the time you're either doing this or you're doing this. So the only time you're really going to just like hard cast Enveloping Mist on someone and then not pump Vivifies into them after is probably before the tantrum on Kragmaw or during Galv. So in Galv, you might choose to Galv inside of the third boss of Temple. You might choose to just envelop as a target because you don't want to move your statue around, or you just want to have renewing kind of ticking on them and stuff like that because you're trying to heal so many people at once. And then for Kragma, you might put a couple envelopings out before the tantrum happens, and you don't really need to worry about putting like Soothing Mist into enveloping here, of course, because you don't care about the healing then, you just care about having the hots on them for later. Most of the time, if you're choosing to envelop a target, it's because you're going to pump Vivifies on them afterwards, so it's pretty natural when you're enveloping that you're going to Soothing Mist, envelop, and then start pumping Vivifies on a target, usually your tank. What I do think is more important is all of these distinctions up here. So I said the first thing that you want to look out for when you're choosing whether or not to Soothing Mist is how much healing they need. But the other thing to look out for, of course, is your Jade Serpent statue. And so there's another column to this table that I want to include now. So where this comes into play is if you need to heal. Usually we're just going to say you're always keeping you're wanting to keep your statue on your tank, but you have to go and like top your like mage or rogue who just took damage from something. So if you choose a Soothing Mist and then Vivify that person in order to top them and get this healing, you also need to take into account that you probably don't want to leave your statue on this rogue or mage, and instead you want it on your tank. So that's going to add an extra second to your time to cast, and that's going to bring your efficiency way down. So that's these numbers over here. So any of the spells where you didn't cast Soothing Mist, the efficiency is exactly the same because you don't have to move your statue after. But if doing so requires you to move your statue back after, the efficiency is a lot lower because you have to add a second to this time to cast. And so the same thing here. So even though we said this was the most efficient option whenever you're healing, if you need this amount of healing, of course. If you don't need this amount of healing, of course, it's not the most efficient option. It would have been more efficient to cast 2 Vivifies because it's less time spent. But if you do need this amount of healing, this efficiency gets a lot worse because you have to take the time to move the statue back after. Now, these numbers over here are not exact. They're kind of like the worst case scenario. They're kind of like, let's say you just put your statue on your tank and then the rogue goes and takes the damage, so you choose his Soothing Mist and then double Vivify them, and then you have to move the statue back right away. That's what these numbers represent. These numbers are not as dire or drastic if, say, your statue was had only half duration left or was about to fall off anyways. Because if it was about to fall off anyways and you're gonna have to refresh it on your tank anyways, then it wasn't really a loss that you took the time to do this effective healing to your DPS. A good example I can think of when this kind of philosophy might happen is like the first room of Motherload. So you have like clotheslines and grease guns going out, so you really want to make sure that you're topping off your DPS. So the next clothesline or grease gun that comes out, you can top them off. But at the same time, most of the time in that room, the tanks are kiting the peacekeepers around, and they're not taking crazy amounts of damage, but you do want to make sure you're keeping your statue on them in case they're running out of your range, or just making sure that if they're getting hit by a charge claw, they immediately have some source of healing so they're not just dying. And so I think this philosophy of knowing how much healing each of your spells is going to do and choosing the right choice is going to save you a lot of globals and make you be able to effectively top your DPS before that next event happens. Because you know one closing could go on your mage, could go on your rogue, and then you're gonna have a mech jockey in the middle and you know he's gonna grease gun soon. So you gotta know how to top both of them before that next event happens. And the only way you're really gonna get familiar with knowing which of these choices is correct is to go out and practice. It's also paying attention to things like your cloak procs, knowing when you have Secret Infusion up, how much bigger your heals are, things like Swirling Sand procs, especially if you're running Spirit Preservation, knowing that you have 5 stacks of Spirit, and then knowing after that your next Vivify is going to crit if you have rank 3 of the Essence, are all really important. So basically the gist of this is Soothing Mist does add extra healing. You basically need to know how much healing, and that you do need to factor in the fact that you're going to have to move your statue after. Now this doesn't always apply. Somewhere it doesn't apply at all is maybe like the Golden Serpent inside of King's Rest, because you're just going to be moving your statue on whoever is taking damage from that dot, and you don't really care about keeping it on your tank at all, so you don't have to think about this. But the good example I want you to think of is the first boss of Motherload, or sorry, not the first boss room of Trash and Motherload, to where you might want to think about moving this around. I did want to include these numbers because I think they're important, but again, I don't think you should stress too much about the enveloping mist kind of min-max, because like I said, most of the time you're just choosing to cast one enveloping mist, or you're enveloping and then you're pumping that person, so it's not as important. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this has helped you realize kind of the pros and cons in choosing to cast Soothing Mist before Vivifies or Enveloping. I'm also going to try and write a Google Doc and include it below the stream. If you are someone who learns better from reading things and seeing things, it'll include all of these charts if you're interested in it. And thank you so much for watching.